All right, everyone. It is 5:30. Oh, you're just waving for fun. That's cool. We've got a jam-packed presentation here. We're jamming ground meat into a casing because we're doing how the sausage is made. You're going to get a couple of vignettes from the 5, soon-to-be 6 of us, and then there's going to be a Q&A at the end. So let's get this party rolling, starting with Emily Anthony.
Hi, everybody. My name's Emily. As Adam said, I am one of the department heads. Adam's the other department head. Everyone snaps for Adam. Or claps. We can do either. Okay. They actually listen. That's amazing. Okay.
Also, when you want the next slide, just let me know.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things, notably project management. Boo, hiss, boring. Design for manufacturing. Boo, hiss, slightly less boring. And then remembering folks' names, which is the most important part of this panel, a.k.a. PMED de PharmaFest. Please, next slide. I'm apparently a department head now. What that means is all the blame, none of the credit, except I did it myself. Okay, next slide. So those of you who work in jobs that have timelines will recognize this horrible timeline. Swadge is one of those departments that operates almost year-round. What we wanted was the top bar, starting in like May. So all those Swadges, if you got a Swadge, hold it up. Hell yeah.
Nice.
All right, thank you. So we wanted to start in May, and that didn't happen. We actually started in August. And the lesson to be learned here is you start 4 weeks late, you will end 4 weeks late unless you make it up. How many weeks do you think we made up? 0. Do you know what time? Well, I should say time. Do you know what day the Swadges arrived at the warehouse? Tuesday. So we made it to MAGFest. Good job, everyone. Snaps for everyone. Yay! Yeah, snaps for GHL, honestly. And snaps for Roy in Shenzhen, China. Thanks, Roy. Anyway, the point of this slide is to show you generally the timeline of the hardware design, which is obviously a hot dog. Next slide. My other lesson in project management this year is a concept known as scope creep. So at the beginning of a project, you define your scope, which is we are going to design and manufacture a little swag badge gamepad for all of our beautiful MAGFest attendees who wish to pay us $49 at the merch booth. The problem was that wasn't enough. I'm a gluttonous fool. So I thought, we had a Swadge hot dog. What if we had another one? If you have a long dog, hold it up. Look at these disgusting, horrible things. All right, that is a foot-long Swadge. We measured it. We are in Subway. It's not 10.5 inches. It is 12 inches of juicy, fat fiberglass and copper and embarrassment. And the best part is they work. Thank you. Is Charles here? Thanks, Charles. Say it loud enough. Don't scream it. I'm just kidding. Wherever he is in the building. Thanks, Charles. Okay. Next slide, please. So that's how the long dog was born. These were for the crazy tier people because you're crazy. So thank you for supporting MAGFest, supporting the foundation, Child's Play, all of that. Enjoy your weird merch. Next slide. So the other thing that I take care of is the Swadge shell. The Swadge shell is actually how I got into Swadge back in 2021 or 2, I don't remember. So anyone have an old Swadge? I know you do in the front. Anyone else hold one up? So anyone have a square wavebird? No, we see a couple gunships. Thank you for bringing them. We love to see the old ones. So we've been making the shell for a couple years now, and one of my design challenges this year was how to entice attendees to keep buying it because they're expensive to make and we want to give you something that you want, right? So we thought about like functionality. And one thing that I've been working with a couple of different departments on is event gamification, which is integrating the event MAGFest itself as its own little game. You'll notice if you get the magazine or you go to certain locations such as Info Desk, there is a stamp rally. So that's one of our pilots, right? So I was thinking function. Oh my God, what if it held things like an ETA bag or an ITA bag or a lunchbox? Oh my God, we're food themed. We nailed it. So a lunch shell emerged. I call it like a carry-out shell. It doesn't have like a cute name, but it can hold a chapstick, your room key, and wired headphones.
Next slide.
Next slide, please. So this was a team effort between Eric. Eric, raise your hand, say hi. Hi, Eric. Thank you, Eric. And Greg. Is Greg here? Greg. Hopefully he can hear us from VR Zone or in his bed where he should be sleeping and resting. So Eric made the original prototype and he 3D printed it. Eric's holding it up here. Yeah, please pass it around. Look at it. And then Greg got artistic with it, and he integrated one of our mascots, Dr. Garbotnik, and a lot of the logos and such. And then I made it manufacturable. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to read this slide to you. I'll just say it's actually really hard to design an injection molded plastic piece. It took way longer than it should have. Remember what I said about 4 weeks? These actually arrived before the Swadges, even though I was doing design on Christmas for this. So, go team. Anyway, yeah, we can move on. My last lesson is remembering names. I am so bad at remembering names, especially when you guys are all little screen names. So what I did is I bought name tags, and everyone who worked on the Swadge gets a name tag that says this, and you're legally required to wear it for the rest of your life. So please put your name on it. Thank you. And then maybe I'll learn your name eventually.
We'll get a pen later.
You.
All right. Snaps and claps. Droopy. All right, next up we have Jeremy Sinscombe. Did I get that right?
No. Stinscombe, but yeah.
Okay.
So how I ended up writing 3 programs for 2025, or what happens when the voices win. So, next slide. So who am I? I'm an electrical engineer. I specialize in microcontrollers. In the second year attending Mag Super, and I fell in love with the Swadge and decided I wanted to do it. Next slide, please. So I made 3 modes this year. I made Choa Grove, which is like a miniature Chow Garden 2048, which is a 2048 clone. If you don't know what that is, I can't help you. And Bongo Cat. So go find that one. That one's fun. So I fell in love with it. I saw that we got a Doom clone last year working on the ESP32, and I loved playing the Breakout clone all con. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna sign up for this and say, hey, can I join up? Next slide, please. So I joined the team, and why did I make 3 games? That's a lot for spare time type stuff. So I made Choa Grove under the assumption that we're going to have a hero game. We're going to have one major game that everyone was going to chip in, and we're going to have a few other smaller games that you could do in your own spare time. That's not how it goes. It's you end up choosing that. If you want to team up with someone, you can, but you don't have to. And this year, we mostly all went and did our own things. We helped each other out, but we did our own thing. So I made this giant document of here's all the cool things we're going to add into it, and then I had to tackle that myself. So now you're saying, well, that's the major restraint, why did you make 3? Hey, we're getting there. Next slide. So so I had a bunch of false starts. I had to learn how to program for the Swadge. This isn't Unity. You don't have we do have some stuff from previous years that we can repurpose, but it's not just as easy as saying, oh yeah, let's just draw something in the screen. You have to make sure you've initialized it. There's a bunch of things that I didn't understand since I don't use straight C that much. But also my development environment refused to work for 2 months straight, which I finally got it working. So what happened was I found a 2048 tutorial on YouTube and I was like, you know what? I know, like, I can use this to figure out how to actually program the Swadge. So, single weekend, quick in and out project, easy. The code's already there. So, how long could it take? Next slide, please. So, a few weeks later, it mostly worked. The numbers were teleporting into position, no sliding, and I got stuck on this hard stuck for a month. And I ended up having to get Adam over there to actually debug the code for me, and he ended up having to rewrite several parts of it just because I got so up in my head with how I was trying to do things that I just got stuck. And then we ended up with tilt controls as a bonus, so if you like the tilt controls, you can blame him. After a bit more polish, it was done, and oh, it's August. I haven't started Choa yet. All right, next slide. So now I know what I'm doing roughly, and I can start actually hammering down on it. The sparring minigame I got set up first, just without any sprites or images or anything. I had a ridiculous request for my artist, which I'll get to. And then we had I had other modes like a competition, like a race and like a performance, like dancing competition type thing. It was November. And I was burnt out to the point after I got the main grove done and the sparring done that I just kind of said, I'm going to finish this to make sure these two modes actually work, and then we're just going to ship it. I'm going to cut the other two modes. Next slide, please. So, yeah, so Choa 24, Bongo. What's Bongo? So we had feature freeze in January 3rd. It was originally November 27th. You know, we don't want to keep making software up until the day of. Yeah, but January 3rd was supposed to be the feature freeze. No, we're not adding anything more. So Bongo the concept came up on January 4th. So what happened is we had Jay Fry back there. Yep, hey. Say, hey, wouldn't this be cool? I said, you know what? You convince Adam, I'll do it. And it took me like 3 hours to throw it together, and it's pretty fun. So, yeah. Next slide, please. So, what have we learned with these three games? Despite what your brain tells you, you're allowed to ask for help. One of the things that reasons it took me a month to get the 2048 tile sliding was just because I didn't want to ask someone for help. If I had asked Adam, it would have been done in 3 days, and then I wouldn't have had a problem. Game scope, keep it down to what you know your team is going to be able to do. If it's just you only know you, make sure you can do it. Or if you have a team, make sure the team knows here's what you're doing, because otherwise it's not getting done. If it's your first time developing your first Swadge, and please, just do something simple. Do 2048, do tic-tac-toe, something so you get the basics of how to set everything up before you do anything out. If something is funny, you're allowed to continue add it even after the deadline, maybe. And my shit posts are too high quality, so I need to make less Bongo worse next time, so I don't have to actually polish it. Next slide. Special thanks. So I have a ton of special thanks to the musicians who helped me. I don't do music. All the musicians on the project did an awesome job. All the artists did an awesome job. Poor Katie. I asked her for 1,500 sprites, and I was like, okay, I didn't realize this wasn't a team. This is one person. We can back off. Programming, so much help from all the other programmers, people up here, people who aren't here, and all the moral support. And that's what I got.
All right, next up we have Numajo, who's going to take my seat.
Cool. So I'm going to play some music. Yep. Cool. Thank you. So yeah, I'll try and keep me on time. Yep. Okay, so I'm Numajo, Joe Newman. I am a musician. I'm not a coder, although I like to pretend. And I've been working on the Swadge. This is my third year working on it. I got involved because of this guy, who's been my roommate for most MAGFest events. And I always love all of the Swadge stuff. And he invited me to do a song for the 20th, the Waybird, which then led me to do the music for Magtroid Pocket last year. And as is always the case, you get bit and you just do more. So this year I was given a specific task as sort of the de facto music director. So last year there was one game, Magtroid Pocket. It was the hero game, so to speak, and it had 8 tracks And the music capability of the Swadge were pretty limited. It was just 2 square waves, no modulation, no volume control, not really even stereo because it's so close to your face. And the challenge was actually a really fun one, which was how much can you actually do with just 2 square waves. Now we have a different set of challenges entirely. We've got 5 games. They are not connected at all. And I still wanted to do 8 tracks, but there's also Swadge Hero, which involved managing 14 additional songs from some of the fine people here, and they'll get a shout out later, but a tremendous amount of music, and it's a lot more complicated. So thanks to Dylan, who's not here, but is... Oh, Dylan's right there! Oh, never mind. Hi, Dylan. I just got it. Anyway, the sound capabilities of the Swadge were tremendously upgraded, and it's the most noticeable difference you can tell when you see between this year and last year, this big ol' honkin' speaker. So we have a whole lot more that we can do. So we can do 24 voices, lots of different waves and channels, full general MIDI support, percussion, pitch bend, attack, decay, sustain, release. So many tools that actually it was a new type of challenge, which is how can I actually take advantage of this and make something musical and not be totally paralyzed by all of these new toys at my disposal. I actually sometimes longed for the square waves. So a little bit about the creative process, and will I be able to play the individual songs or the little files here? Well, yeah, but I want to click the little things. I don't have the pointer.
There it is.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so this is, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we can go real deep into music theory nerdery. But my kind of goal, again, to deal with the first challenge of how do you compose for all these different tunes, I really like, a lot of classic Nintendo does this idea of like theme and variation. And there will be some sort of unifying DNA that runs through the entirety of the Swadge. So that was kind of my meta goal, and you probably won't tell unless you're like looking at it closely, but all of the songs that I composed have actually a common thread, and that thread is the credits. The credits was actually the first thing that I composed. It was intended to be kind of the showcase for the entire Swadge, and all of the MIDI capabilities that it had, as well as also secretly containing a whole bunch of nods to Sega games, right? So last year was all about pumping it full of Nintendo and Metroid stuff. I am a huge Sega fan, so I love all of the Sega games and music, and there's a bunch of really obscure ones here. But first, I'm just going to play. These are like little 5-second clips. Cut me off when I'm out of time. But so, let's see if this works. Oh no. No, they didn't load. Oh, there it is. So this is the easy one. Okay, anyone know what that is a reference to? Yeah, it's Sonic. So, that's a gimme. Oop. Oh, click it again. There you go. Yeah. So that's the easiest one. No, barely copyright infringing. But then what was fun was, if you listen very closely in Big Bug, the background for the exploration is that same rhythm of bum 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 bum. So there are again these little Easter eggs throughout all of them. So the main melody, here it is. Uh-oh, is it gonna work? Yep, that's it. It's just those two measures. Again, I get very obscure with my references. It's from Super Monkey Ball, Banana Blitz, Space Case. So, is it gonna work? Again, very little. This is how I think. I hear these little tiny phrases of like, oh, I like 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, and I like that, and so it lodges itself somewhere in the subconscious, and I like that note, that note pattern. Then it shows up again Here. So that's from Pango. Again, this was really fun because it was about kind of cannibalizing my own work. So take the thing and then make another whole song that's just based around that one tiny little phrase. Okay, moving forward a little bit. So yeah, there's it's hard to see, but yeah, this is a game called Racing Hero, which I'll play coming up. It's another super obscure Sega arcade game that I recently covered actually with. Hey, there's Ian. Hey, hi Ian. And our very good friend Logan Bigeron Tucker, who is unfortunately tested positive for COVID this morning, but so he's not here. But everybody give him a round of applause because he did a bunch of stuff with the Swadge, and he's just an amazing, amazing human. But then here for the bridge of the song, how am I doing? 40 seconds. Okay. So oh yeah, this is what it's from. So it's this song by Snail's House that I love called Restart. Really cool music video too. You should check it out. But it had this really cool bridge progression, and so I did it. Okay, I won't play the credits version, but then the exact same melody from the credits over the bridge became the melody for Choa Grove. So, if you can read music, you can see it's the same. Yeah, so again, a lot of this sort of self-cannibalization. Every one of the sort of main game themes that I did is also subtly designed to take advantage of the hardware in a different way. So Pango was about using a little bit more of the pitch bend stuff that we had. Okay, I'll wrap it up. Big Bug is about using the MIDI drums that we had. Choa Grove, I can't remember what we were doing, but it was cool. I think that was the last one that I did. And yeah, they're all designed. Oh, and then 2048, which was all about using the attack and release to make this kind of interesting, kind of vibey tune, which is it's based off of this. Yeah, it's cool. The last thing I'll note is there's a fun little Easter egg that I put in almost everything that I do called the 34518, and I won't tell you what it is. But they know in the back, and it's in there, and that was like one of the things that had to be in this. So that is the climax of the song, and I use the word climax for no reason. Ask a nerdy musician why the 3418 is associated with the word climax. All right, that's my time. Thank you. I'm sorry. One last thing. I do have to give a special shout out to the next slide. Is again to wrap it up. Everybody who made the songs for the Swadge. This is a tremendous amount of work and effort, including Ian and Carrie back there, and a bunch of other people who you will see around here. And if you see them and they did music you like, give them a high five. Thank you, guys.
Cool. All right. Next up, we have James. I'm not going to try to butcher your last name. I already messed up one today.
Okay, I'm James Albrecht. I developed Big Bug, and I threw some of my hobbies up on that screen. Slide. So, I'm just going to kind of go over how development went. I like to leverage help in my weak areas, and for many years, I've been using languages that do a lot of things for me, like Python and C#. Is the mic on?
Yeah, he's got to get real close to it.
Okay. So, yes, I have some technical weaknesses, especially when it comes to making a big project for the first time in C. I consider myself a little bit more creatively inclined than technically inclined, but kind of a jack of all trades. So to start out the game, I thought of old arcade games that would be a kind of a baseline to start from, and I thought of Dig Dug, the old Capcom game. And for me, it's important to start with fun mechanics. So in the beginning, it was just kind of like a bubble wrap popping simulator. Moving around felt fun, digging the dirt. And I was able to iterate quickly, doing small little features like that along the way. I like to think of some overall guiding principles when I'm making a game. So for Big Bug, I'd say it was about immersion and replayability and humor. And I don't really give myself too much top-down design, so I just started out with this kind of simple bubble wrap popping simulator, and then act on these decisions as they almost present themselves as the game develops. Don't hide development efforts from the end user. So I'll come back to this point on a later slide. And the best feeling for me is when my own game surprises even myself, and that kind of gives you some insight into my disorganized development style. Next slide. So nobody really knew what the design of the Swadge was going to be at first, and I was kind of hoping for A, B, and C buttons like the Sega Genesis, and we ended up going with the C touchpad, and so just kind of rescoping things or redesigning things is important to stay with the direction of where the rest of the team is headed. So I used the touchpad for firing harpoons, and it started turning into a twin-stick shooter. And we also had these LEDs, and I just thought it would be such a neat way to use that as the user interface for your fuel/health level. So it was just really cool how these things developed along the way in tandem with the hardware. Next slide. Okay. So when I was really struggling with the issues that C presented, then I would sort of decompress by making art, and I threw a bunch of it up on this screen here. And some of it was kind of seeded by our other talented artists, but then I took it from them and I tweaked it in my own way, because I was very particular about everything sort of fitting together in terms of contrast, hue, and value, especially separating important elements in the entire game as a whole. So the foreground is visually distinctive from the background, and I went through many iterations on this. And then whenever I was feeling compelled to get back to programming, then I would offload some of the artistic things back to our artists while I program. Next slide. That's the point I just made, but really awesome art up there on the screen from a bunch of my friends, and also shout out to the composers. Next slide. So I had this really really deep fascination with trying to make lighting happen on the Swadge, which is a pretty ridiculous idea. It's an ESP32 processor, and there's no way that you could do per pixel lighting in real time on that thing. But you can put a ridiculous amount of sprites into SpyRAM, and about 2,000 sprites pumped out of Python later. We had all of the bugs and everything generated at 6 different lighting levels each, and it was basically just an insane switch case of code, looking up like which version of sprites to put on the screen where. Next slide. So going back to an earlier point where you don't want to hide development efforts from the player, I had all this really cool lighting done, and so I was thinking, how can I turn this into a gameplay thing? And so it turned into headlamps from Garbotnik, and the headlamps wake up the bug eggs, and it honestly kind of surprised me the way it turned out. Traveling through the corridors, almost like out of a Ridley Scott alien movie, where you're trying not to wake up all the eggs, and you try not to keep any of the eggs illuminated for too long. Next slide. Okay. It is a roguelike, so when I was coming up with the different choices that the player could make, I just like to make it as difficult for them to decide as possible, and that's how I balance. Decisions. Next slide.
Coming up on time, by the way.
Okay, we'll wrap it up quickly. Just some cool moments in the game there, cool art. Next slide. When the game's feeling stale, that's when you start adding more gameplay loops on top of gameplay loops and steal other sprites from other people's games. Next slide. Okay, we'll wrap it up here, but I am not sure if it's possible to get to the end of the game, so you all are exposed to spoiler content here. That's the end of the game. Tell me if it's possible to get there, because I think it'll crash before you do. The game literally had a gameplay loop like 1 week before firmware freeze, and it really came together at the end. That's it. Next slide. Next slide, please.
I'm trying. All right, heck of a game. On to the next. Jay Vega.
Hi, John Vega, also known as JVeg. I've been making games for much longer than I'd like to admit. And some of those games have included you may be familiar with, such as Super Swadge Land and Galactic Breakdown, aka Breakout. And I've also been attending MAGFest since 2013, and that is where the story of Pango starts. Next slide, please. So over the years, I've found that one of my favorite MAGFest experiences is just going down to the arcade and playing random games and finding a new favorite, and then figuring out a way to play that game at home so that you can continue the MAGFest vibes going long after the event. You can see there a picture of the arcade in 2014, right after it opened, and there's no lines, you could just go play. It was awesome. Next slide, please. So one game in particular that I discovered this way was Pengo. So Pengo is a Sega arcade game from 1982. It showed up at the MAGFest arcade for several years, but since then it kind of disappeared for some reason. But it's a super cool game, and if you ever see it, you should definitely play it. Next slide. The thing is, I found that this game doesn't have many ports that are easily accessible that you can play right now. So a lot of the ports are for old consoles, which I do have. That's not a problem for me. Most people don't have all the old consoles though. And those ports are only okay. So for instance, this is just one example, the Atari 5200 version is fully featured. The frame rate's not great, but the worst part is that Atari 5200 controller. So it's like, good luck trying to play with that. Otherwise, great version. And then on the Switch, there is a 8-player focused multiplayer version. You can only get on the Japanese eShop, but that doesn't stop me. It's super fun, but like getting 700 people to play with you, and then inevitably, since you play the game more than they have, you're just gonna demolish them. Those friends better be people you want to be your former friends afterwards. And unfortunately, there is no Arcade Archives version of Pengo. Get on it, Sega. Next slide, please. So anyway, that's one of the main reasons I decided to make Pango. I didn't know that the mascot character would actually be named Pango, one letter off of Pengo, when I just decided to create this game. it just was a funny coincidence. Next slide, please. So with this game, I had other goals too. Number one is limit scope. As you can see, that's a running theme throughout this presentation. I do have a 2-year-old who is growing fast, but she still needs my time. So essentially, I had to make this game like within just by spending maybe 1 or 2 hours every night of the very little free time that I had. So what helped is actually reusing the Swadgeland engine again, because I already did that for Galactic Breakdown. For the longest time, I felt Pango was actually a Swadgeland hack. On day one, I was able to have the random maze generation working and character movement, but and a whole game loop. But what's funny is some of the Swadgeland behavior stuck around for a while. So like you could still stomp on enemies. There was still like partial gravity. It was really funny like when something would work and I wouldn't expect it to, just because it worked in Swadgeland. And yeah, you can see in the screenshot up there, the Swadgeland HUD stuck around for quite a while. Yeah, limit scope, randomized levels, don't have to worry about making lots of levels, which is fun, and it's fun to coordinate with people, but it's actually hard to get it all together. So that saved me a lot of time. Using more lookup tables. So it's just much easier to balance your game just by changing a number in a table than to have to change like an algorithm that just dynamically decides how difficulty and things work. Of course, even though I really wanted to capture the basic ideas of Pengo, I also wanted to make it original. So it's not a super direct copy of it. So for instance, Pengo limits you to 4-way movement on a grid. Pango gives you full 8-way movement. You're not limited to a grid. You can make corners tightly around the maze and things like that. It feels really good. It also allows for faster gameplay because, and even in Pengo, because of the way movement works, the enemies actually had to pause every time they reached a intersection to make a decision on where to move next. But in Pango, they just keep moving. Another goal was having larger, more expressive sprites. So Swadgeland engine actually was purposely limited for all objects to be 16 by 16 sprites. That was just mainly a scope limitation. Also kept the collision logic very simple. But here I wanted the sprites to be a little bit bigger because these Swadge games are pretty small. And I wanted you to be able to really see these characters. In fact, you can see there one character, Piper, who's not a mascot character, was formerly an unused Swadgeland character that I drew a long time ago. And I decided to bring her in for this game and draw a 16 by 24 version. And you can see just the difference, just 8 rows of pixels actually makes. It doesn't seem like a lot of pixels to work with, but there's just so much more you can do with just a little bit more space. And same goes for the enemies too, with their big expressive eyes and different expressions that you'll see throughout the game. These scoring mechanics. So Pengo, the scoring mechanics were mostly based on defeating enemies. You could do chains of, if you slide a block and it hits multiple enemies, you'll get more points and things like that. And the second mechanic was the bonus blocks, the diamond blocks that you could, if you managed to find enough time to line up in a row, you could get tons of points that way. I wanted to sort of change that second scoring strategy, just to make it more practical, because in Pengo you kind of have to really decide at the beginning of the level like whether you're going to go for it or not. But I wanted to make it a bigger part of the game. Oh yeah. So I simplified how that works. Also, we have amazing music again by Joe and Rampy. And of course, I wanted to maintain the arcade feel. So it's just easy to play a hard master. You can develop strategies, as more and more strategies as you continue playing over and over again, get higher scores, and get further into the game. And of course, I got my way to include an attract mode loop, which just, I think the game is cooler if it looks cool even while you're not playing it. But the number one goal of all, and you can switch to the next slide, is to make sure that I could give all you guys the opportunity to experience that same joy of discovering a game at MAGFest and taking it home with you.
And last is me. So let's start the next timer. Hi, my name is Adam, lead firmware dev. I think I've been mentioned a couple times so far. I've talked a lot about development in years past, and I wanted to do something different, so I'm going to talk about quitting and why you should quit, and how I quit, and how it turned out great. So if you remember the presentation from last year, this is where we left off. That's my daughter being a couple weeks old, and she was small and tired, and I was on paternity, and it turns out you have a lot of time on paternity. And babies at this age don't require too much constant attention, but boy does that change. They get bigger, and they start moving around and picking up things and climbing on things. She has her own little, I call it a switcher price toy. And no lie, I was idly playing with it one day, and I punched in the Konami code, and it gave a little secret jingle. So someone at Fisher-Price knows what's up. And I looked online. I wasn't the first person to find that. I copied this slide from last year. This was one of JVEG's slides, and this caught up to me, right? This is the how much time do you have, and it totally gets eaten by a kid. And at the time, I kind of laughed it off because my daughter was sleeping 18 hours a day or whatever, and yeah, no, it catches up. So I didn't have time this year, and the first reason you should quit is because you don't have time to do something, or you don't have some other resource. And that's okay, right? Be honest with yourself of what you can and can't do, especially if you're working in a team setting. If you can't do something, tell everyone around you, and if it's a good team, like the one we have here, we figure out a way to work around it or fill it in or offload responsibilities or something like that. But the worst thing is if you don't quit, you say, I can do this, and then you don't do this, and then you make everyone else's life miserable. So quit. Don't be stoic about it. Okay, so knowing that I had less time, I definitely needed help on this whole Swadge project. So a big, huge thanks to my wonderful partner in crime who put up with so much of my nonsense over this past year. Wait,
Picture hasn't loaded.
there it is. How did a picture of my wife get in here?
What?
No, I'm not talking about my wife. I'm talking about Emily, who you already heard from, did a tremendous job with everything. Thanks to my wife for putting up my nonsense too. That's kind of separate. So the second reason you should quit is you give someone else the opportunity to shine, right? I had done hardware for the past couple of years. You don't make a strong team by doing everything yourself. You make a strong team by letting other people do stuff. And to do that, you sometimes need to quit. So quit what you're doing and let someone else take it over. But also, be there just in case they need a little bit of guidance. Mentorship is cool. Don't quit being a mentor. Yeah. So, all right. So I quit that. I offloaded hardware. I had some time, so what did I do? The first thing I wanted to do was write pinball. And I got kind of far. You can see this is about as far as I got. And, it obviously looks like pinball, but it sucked. The physics just felt awful, and pinball is a game that lives and dies on its physics. I did deep dives into physics engines, and it turns out the real world is a very complicated place. And there are a lot of physics engines out there, but they're all for computers. They're not for microcontrollers. So you can't take something like a Unity engine and put it on a Swadge, or even Box 2D. It was like way too complicated. So naturally, I tried writing everything from scratch, and I got somewhere, but that somewhere was awful. And I was not having fun banging my head against the wall. And at the same time, I was banging my head against the wall here, which is the King Fahd Hotel in Dakar in Senegal. My family moved there during this whole process, which also took a little bit of time and effort. And before our apartment was ready, we stayed in this hotel, and it may look nice. It's got a palm tree outside. It's not nice. Don't stay there. It'll give you a new appreciation for things like Wi-Fi, air conditioning, dehumidification. My toiletries grew mold because, it was just so humid there the whole time. It was pretty much the Mark Center. The breakfast was good, though. I'll give them props for putting on a good breakfast. But between physics frustrations and hotel frustrations, I was just not a happy camper. And even by the time we moved into our apartment, I was still just generally unhappy. So the third reason you should quit is because you're not having fun. You shouldn't be doing things that you don't enjoy, especially if it's volunteer work. If it's like your actual job and you're getting paid for it, like grit your teeth, money is good. But like if it's something like MAGFest and you're not digging it, just stop. Take a year off. Be an attendee instead of staff. Roll something back, right? No harm, no shame. Totally respect that. So yeah, drop what you're doing if it sucks. And a lot of people will complain about working for MAGFest and they just like secretly love it. Like there's a difference. You can, like, I've heard a lot of complaints from some people and not yeah, but like I know she loves it. All right, so I quit pinball, which meant I now had time back. So what am I going to do with that time? This is a concept called opportunity cost. I'm not usually a shill for podcasts, but Freakonomics is pretty good. There's a book too if you like reading. Opportunity cost, this is the one slide I get to read. It means that for every hour or dollar you spend doing one thing, you're giving up the opportunity to spend that hour or dollar doing something else, something that might make your life better. And this was totally true, and I didn't realize it until I quit pinball and it kind of flipped, because pinball had a really high opportunity cost. It was sucking all of my time. So what did I do now that I had spare cycles? Well, I helped out with 2048, which was previously mentioned. Did a bunch of animations there, and then tilt controls, and then Charles helped me with tilt controls, so that was a real big team effort. Hunter had a bunch of puzzles, and it turns out one of them was a copy-paste of another one, so I stepped in and I wrote a puzzle. First time I'd ever done that. Thank you for the instructions on how to write puzzles, followed them and made one, so we didn't change the name of the game, but it should be titled Hunter's Puzzles, parentheses, and one from Adam, end parentheses. I also did some work on the tutorial, which Dylan started. This is actually an old screenshot. It ran through all the buttons, but it didn't do like all of the hardware peripherals, so I picked that up and I pushed that along so when people can turn on their Swadge, they can understand what it does, which is some feedback we've gotten from past years that it's all kind of confusing. So hopefully less confusing. And by far and away, most of my spare time helping people went to Big Bug, which...
Thank you.
Very welcome. This was a real head scratcher. Like, making the game was a puzzle in and of itself, which felt like a meta game for me. There were a lot of resources and a lot of art to cram into a very small space, and it pushed the limits of the Swadge way more than anything previously, even more than like Magdroid Pocket last year. So there was a whole bunch of tricks that I had to pull out of my sleeve and a couple new techniques that I had to learn. I kind of rewrote Malik, if anyone's familiar with that one. Yeah, that was super fun. But it all fit, and it runs, which is pretty great. And I do want to mention, this isn't a one-way street. I'm not just helping everyone else. People are helping me, too. So I also mentioned all the music for Swadge Hero. The game is nothing without the music. And also for Ultimate Tic-Tac-Toe, which I hope everyone finds a friend to play with. If you don't find a friend, there's an AI, and that was written by Dylan. It turns out AI is non-trivial, and I didn't want to do that myself. So the fourth reason you should quit is you can grow elsewhere if you stop doing what you're currently doing. Right? I wouldn't have had the opportunity to like get better at optimization if I didn't quit and start helping out on Big Bugs. So personal growth is cool too. All right, so to recap, the 4 reasons you should quit is 1, because you don't have the resources like time or energy. 2, you quit to give other people an opportunity to do cool stuff and grow. 3, you quit because you're straight up not having a good time. And 4, you should quit so you can try something else and grow a little bit yourself. So I hope I've convinced at least one of you out there to quit something today. Thank you. And now we get the fun Q&A portion of things. I saw your hand go up, but I'll get to it in a second. We also have a little giveaway. Hold on. I'll pull it out in a second. So does anyone here know what M-points are? Cool. You can win them for tournaments and stuff. We've made them out of PCBs for a number of years, but this is the first year they're functional. You can actually take your M-point down to Makerspace and solder on a header and an LED and turn it into a Swadge add-on. They're all condiment-based. So I have a couple of them to give out on the condition that you must take them to Makerspace and turn them into Swadge add-ons. You can't use them. at the shop as money. So I'll pull those out of my bag. If you ask a question, you get to come up and grab one. I have like 15 or so. All right, I saw your hand up first. Okay, the question was what caused us to 3D print a D-pad, and I'm going to pass off the microphone to the guy who did so.
I felt like it.
Wait, there's more to this story. So I mentioned I worked on Swadge Hero with Adam. So Swadge Hero is Adam used a really interesting free program that like takes MIDI and it maps it to information that you can play like Guitar Hero on essentially. The problem is the MIDIs that we got were really complicated because they would, the composers would send really complicated stuff. They weren't necessarily thinking about how it would play when they made their songs. And I was the one who had to play test all those songs. And it's murder on your thumb to play a really, really hard Guitar Hero on this little D-pad. You can actually see I put masking tape over mine because my thumb was just getting like ripped and not in a fun way. And I was like, can someone please make a D-pad? It would be amazing. And then within like minutes.
I saw that. That's actually what inspired me. Like, I don't want anyone to go through that. Here we go.
And now we have a D-pad, and it makes the game so much better. And you can actually get perfects on the songs if you're good enough. What? Anyway, but thank you for my thumb. Thanks you.
Planning on getting those uploaded to the Swadge GitHub, but we also will be handing out some at the end of this, as well as at the soldering panel as well. There's going to be two different colors, but there's special printing for these at the end of this.
Cool. All right. I saw your hand next. Oh, sure. Mm-hmm. The question is, what does the USB-C connector do? It does two things. You can power the Swadge off it if you have an external power bank or you don't want AA batteries, or you can reprogram it. You need a computer. Three things. What's the third thing? Oh, that's right. You can also... Sure. Okay. It does way more stuff than I remembered. You can also take a USB-C to C cable and plug it into your computer, and one of the utilities is a gamepad mode. So it'll come up as a USB gamepad if you want to play, AAA titles on a Swadge. Okay. Mask over there. Sure. The differences in Swadge. So there's one for pre-orders. There's one at the merch booth. The only thing that's different between them is the color. We just have an exclusive color for the people who chip in ahead of time. That's black. We've been calling that the goth dog. The other one is red. And then, right, if you're in the crazy tier of merch, you have the foot long, which is exceedingly rare. The 3D printed D-pad should be on all of the pre-order ones, the black ones. We also have some here that we're giving away. There will also be some at the makerspace for the soldering panels, and the files will be available online on our GitHub afterwards if you want to do one yourself. And anyone who asks a question, come up to get your endpoint. I'm not going to throw all of them out there. Yeah, you got, yes. So the Malacurite, the short answer was we develop on a simulator. It's not an emulator. The actual hardware has 2 megs of SPI RAM. Your computer has many gigabytes of actual RAM. And we needed something that more closely mimicked the hardware because we were blowing past that limit. And I wanted to know that on PC, not before I flash it, because it's way faster to develop those cycles. Yeah. Hand. Question. Yes, I believe we'll have some prototypes at charity. I think Bryce was. You know what? I'll give him one of my prototypes. We'll make. Oh, sure.
I didn't bring the prototypes, so. But there's also a mostly functional long dog at Charity for.
I did bring my prototypes. I'll just put one of my personal ones up there because Charity is cool. Plans for the SAO point other than the M points? Not immediately. The M points were the big one this year. Last year we used the SAO port to develop the speaker for this year, so it's useful for us personally to develop new hardware before it gets integrated into the board, but nothing else at event. Oh, I got the 5 minutes left sign at the back. Thank you. I'll also hang out afterwards if you want to just do Q&A in the hallway, but I'll get kicked off the stage way in the back. Backwards compatibility. You can take this firmware and put it on old Swadge. You can take older firmware and put it on this Swadge. It will work mostly except for the sound stuff. The speaker and the buzzer are not interchangeable, but everything else. It's possible if you flash it with all the same firmware, but we are not capable of writing firmware today that we can guarantee we're going to be using in the future. Yeah. Hand over there. Why a hot dog? Because, first of all, it's a chili dog, as the audience is reminding you. Second, everyone's favorite blue blur has a penchant for that particular snack. And MAGFest already did a Sonic-themed Swadge that looks like a ring with wings, so we couldn't do that one. So hot dog was the next greatest option. Plus, we could make a foot-long version. Yeah. Right over here.
So I have about 6 of these. I have like each generation in the back. And I've been teaching my kids how to do some of the coding on it. And one of the things we started coding was some of the secret kind of combos.
Sure.
What I wanted to ask, are there any secret combos you're willing to share?
Sure. At this point, it's a pretty open secret. If you punch in the Konami code on the menu, that's basically our debug menu. It's fun if you like to debug stuff. You can see the git hash of the firmware to make sure that you're running the right version, but you should be.
If you spam random buttons, you might accidentally factory refresh your Swadge.
Yeah,
so
factory resets in there
do
also.
that. Just blindly click the buttons. We'll see what happens.
It does play a jingle to unlock.
Oh yeah.
Also, same code works in Pango, and you can play on debug mode and be invincible.
Question. Yep. The little plug is the Swadge add-on connector. That's the one that if you take one of these M points down to Makerspace and you put on the header, you can plug in. So this one is a little ketchup if you want to put on your dog. We also got mustard. Relish is in this pile somewhere. Oh, okay. We got 2 minutes. Yes, we'll go there.
One thing I'm curious about is you mentioned that you had upgraded the speaker system. How do you guys do it? DSPs, bigger speaker?
We put a speaker on it. So we didn't actually have a speaker last year. It was a piezo buzzer, like the old motherboard beep beeps. So we found an honest to goodness like magnetic coil speaker in the package that it is, because a lot of speakers are just like wires. They're meant to be put in other plastic. And then we're driving it off of the ESP's DAC. There's no external, well, there's an amplifier, but there's no like external DAC. The sound quality is good enough for Swadge. Yeah. There's also a headphone jack if you want to plug in headphones or an external speaker. That's right. Yep. No, sorry. One. Sure. Yeah. Everything is currently on GitHub. Swadge.com should be updated. We were a little slow in that, a little rushed towards the end, but there's a URL on the back of the Swadge, and that should be live within a day or two, assuming I yell at the right person. So I don't actually have access to that webpage. Way in the back. So is the D-pad and the touchpad are not interchangeable. They do different things pretty much everywhere. I think the game that uses the touchpad the most is Big Bug. It's what you fire your harpoons with. They are interchangeable in Choa Garden. There's 2 control schemes. I think that might be the only game where they do kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I got some complaints about using the D-pad, so I added that functionality so you could switch between the two. It defaults to C-stick, but it's easy enough in the settings to just switch it off.
Is there a way to do feature requests for hardware features? Sure. Go to our GitHub page and create an issue.
More Wi-Fi range
Answer
specifically, though? No, the ESP32's got its antenna on there. We're not modifying that.
Answer the Swadge survey.
Yes, there will be a survey at some point after the event in one of those post-event emails. Okay. Way in the back. What are we happy to see aside from people playing with the Swadges? Oh, that's right. Here, plug the performance.
Okay. What's today? Thursday? Tomorrow, Friday, 3 to 4 p.m., there's a small ensemble showcase hosted by the orchestra with a bunch of aspiring small groups. And I worked with the composer of the Magtroid game last year, Joe, and we are doing a live rendition of the Magtroid soundtrack there. Small ensemble showcase. Sorry.
Also, I wanted to mention that the MAGFest Indie Showcase Clash tomorrow at 3 p.m. Expo Hall A. Is that right?
Yeah, it's in consoles.
It's in consoles? Okay. Pango will be featured as part of that tournament, so get practicing and go play Caravan Mode and see how many points you can get in 5 minutes.
Related to that tournament, we have a Swadge simulator cab in the Indie Arcade. Go play it. It's de-featured mostly for hardware issues, but you can play several of the games and kind of demo it and then convince yourself to buy one at the merch booth.
Awesome.
Yes. I'm getting the wrap it up sign. Yep. Any other questions you can ask me outside. If you want to get involved, the easiest way is to email circuitboards@magfest.org. It's the email that's on the back of the Swadge. It's the email that's over there. We check it. We respond. I hope to hear from you, and I will see you again next year.
Thank you all for
If you have
coming.
a Swadge,